Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Host. Hello, welcome back to another episode of MS Gamers Hut, and I'm your host, Ted Michael. I hope you liked last week's reviews about racing games. I know it took me a minute to set them down after I started playing them, so I could review this week's games. This week, I'm going to review puzzle games. Puzzle games are amongst the most popular ever. In fact, the most popular individual gaming franchise on mobiles are Angry Birds. Angry Birds is a puzzle game. The genre has evolved consistently, and developers have been finding new and exciting ways to tease our brains and making us think, this stumping us entirely. It also helps that puzzle games are easily playable on mobile games, mobile devices, which has only helped skyrocket their popularity. The first game I'm reviewing today is Clue, the classical murder mystery board game turned into an app. Clue, or Cluedio, if you played the board game outside of the United States, has been around for almost 70 years. Like a lot of other classic board games, it's now been re-imaged with a digital mobile release. But unlike some of the other board games that have been turned into apps, the developer Marmalade Game Studio seems intent on keeping the classic whodunit setup instead of trying to cram the well-worn format into something more lucrative. The basic game formula remains the same as it ever was. Mr. Body has been murdered in an elaborate Gilded Age mansion, and 6 posh guests are the prime suspects. As the investigation it's your job. As investigator, it is your job to determine the location of the crime, the murderer, and his or her weapon of choice. Players move around the board with dice rolls, discovering clues that let them eliminate all of the impossible answers, arriving at the truth, hopefully before their opponents. Through the core gameplay remains the same. The digital version of Clue is filled the room with new character art, animation, music, and sound effects, and possibly the most elaborate Clue board ever made. Unfortunately, the game is missing a multiplayer at launch, so you'll have to play against the AI foes for the time being. The developers say that multiplayer will arrive in the future updates. The next game I'm going to talk about is called Cut the Rope. Cut the Rope is a downright adorable action puzzle physics game. It's also fresh, challenging, gorgeous, and highly entertaining. It has simple rules, intuitive controls, and can be played in short bursts or blitz through a marathon gaming session. In short, it's exactly the type of game you want to play on your smartphone. The goal in each level is to drop a piece of candy suspended by a series of ropes into the mouth of a cuddly little monster named Om Nom. That is located somewhere on the screen. To do that, you have to cut the ropes in ways to make the candy swing, jump, or fall into the little guy's mouth. Along the way, you also have to try to pick up all the star items in each level. But this is a puzzle game, so you have to put on your thinking cap to figure out which rope to cut and in what order. To make things more complicated, you also encounter movable pegs, spikes, electricity, bubbles that can cause your candy to float, and whoopee cushions, which send puffs of air that can blow the candy in different directions. Since Cut the Rope launched, new levels packs have added gravity puzzles and broken candy pieces to the game. Each level is cleverly designed to make delivering the candy to the monsters difficult, but not impossible. Solving the levels requires precise timing and delicate precision as you progress through the game's 150 levels. With more on its way, the difficulty mounts steadily, which results in more real head scratchers toward the end. Both Crystal and Game Center provide leaderboard and achievements, giving the game a healthy amount of replay value. Unfortunately, Cut the Rope does have some control issues. For instance, once sliding pegs are introduced, the game occasionally thinks you're trying to move a peg when you mean to cut a rope, or vice versa. This can get you into trouble in some levels. Cut the Rope is a game that nearly everybody will enjoy. It offers all the charm and variety and smart level designs you could hope for a puzzle game, while being simple enough to be accessible to anybody. Cut the Rope launched in 2010 and now has 10 titles under its franchise. The next game I want to review is called The Room. The Room is a fascinating game. You're in a room with a well-locked safe, and your goal is to get that safe open. The game makes the story more detailed than that, but The Room's storyline is its real interesting aspect. The fun comes from the hours of puzzle and challenges required to break open the safe, coupled with the game's delightful creepy ambience. There's a lot to like about The Room. The first thing you'll notice is that the ambience mentioned earlier. The game's graphics are excellently drawn. The facts, three-dimensional rooms, the safe it contains look great and are fun to explore. And the soundtrack and sound effects set a mood not quite of fear, but something entertaining, off-putting about the experience. Why is this safe so intricately locked up? What's the heck is it protecting? Okay, when the creepy whispers start in Chapter 3, yeah, it's a little scary. All that excellent mood setting and imaginary wouldn't amount to much were if it not for the intuitive gameplay. You'll need to navigate around the room to unearth discoveries. Oh, this table leg can also unscrew to reveal a hidden key. And the seemingly plain panel masks a tappable portion to access another section. The tapping these buttons in the right order will open a secret drawer. As I mentioned in the onset, there is a story behind why you're digging through the room and the safe it contains. But that's the boring part. The fun is the journey, figuring out how to solve the increasingly intricate puzzles in the game. There are in-game hints, awkwardly written in view, that are exceedingly helpful in winding your way through the room. The internet also plays host to a wealth of room walkthroughs, while completed the game without consulting any. I'm not ashamed to admit I did get stuck 3 times, relying on such guides to help me further along. If the amusing, complicated gizmos in the room aren't fanciful enough for you, the game adds a further element of magic with its eyepiece you discover early on. From time to time, you'll need to put the eyepiece back on to discover otherwise hidden imagery necessary to solve certain puzzles. The element adds a nice dimension to the gameplay, though I did find that it somehow took me out of the game a little bit, just because it feels a bit faker than the rest of the game somehow. Where the room excels in layering its puzzles upon further puzzles. When you find a key, you might also need to rotate pieces of that key to make it fit in the keyhole you discovered. As you place cogs into a gear system, you might need to reposition some to get further along. And when you discover items that you can add to your inventory, you might in turn need to examine your own inventory to uncover the secrets those items hide. If the room has a weakness, it's the controls. I found that them fussy and occasionally frustrating. You can double tap to zoom in, but only pinch to zoom out. And sometimes getting those zoom gestures recognized in either direction takes multiple tries. Since zooming is an integral part of playing the game, that can get a smidge tiresome. But the truth is, you like me, probably won't care. The game and its puzzles are so engaging that you'll look past the intermittently annoying controls to get back to the intricately crafted puzzles. The game is great. The puzzles are both challenging and discoverable, and you'll milk at least 3 hours of fun gameplay from the app. The graphics and sounds are top-notch. If you prize replayability over those other factors, however, note that it's limited. Once you've completed the room, it's unlikely you'll want to go through the entire game again, but you'll probably get a kick out of introducing the game to someone else and watching them work their way through it. The next game I'm going to review is called Prune. I must admit, Prune snuck up on me through its, though it's probably shouldn't have. Made by an ex-AAA developer out of Madison. Apparently the game had been floating around the Midwestern game scene, and I somehow missed it until I got an email about it a couple of days ago from a friend. And holy heck, do I wish I had been seen this sooner, because Prune is a gorgeous and unique experience. Prune is not really like anything you've played, in that it's a game about tree pruning. You draw a line from the base provided in order to draw the tree upward, from which it starts sprouting branches. Now, to help it grow, you must trim off certain branches, which will cause other parts of the tree to grow bigger and better. Essentially, the more substantial the trim, the more the rest of the tree can grow. Though if you cut off a branch, it won't grow any further. Each level gives you the goal of getting the tree to grow at a certain amount of flowers, generally by coming in contact with light. Where the fun and challenge of Prune comes in, it's that you have to deal with elements like wind, sun, accelerate or corrupt your tree's growth, and more you'll have to grow and prune your tree around difficult circumstances. The game does a great job at throwing all sorts of interesting challenges your way, keeping you on your toes as to what might come next. There's loads of variety across the several dozen levels here. Prune goes a long way to avoid any form of frustration. If you fail at a level too many times, it'll offer you the opportunity to skip it. Any solution really has to be triggered once. If the tree falls apart, gets infected by red, or if you trim it and accidentally cut off a large branch you would otherwise fail, well, you still beat the level. There's no real high score tracking for doing well, but that's not the point of Prune. Prune is perfectly playable on phones since you can pinch and zoom around the map, but it's a game that I much prefer playing on a tablet. It's easier to make subtle changes on the bigger screen. Thankfully, there is cloud support, so your levels will be saved over multiple devices, which works seamlessly. It works seamlessly for me anyways. While you're not syncing anything more complex than the levels you have unlocked and completed, it's still quite the welcome feature to have. This is a game that requires quick thinking and reactions, as you need to manage your tree's growth, but it's not an action game. You have to find a thoughtful in how you plan out your growth pattern, but you then have to be sure to swiftly cut down anything that could harm the entire tree's growth. But sometimes you just have to be smart when your tree is all grown out to cut only what needs cutting. Prune contains multitudes. That's something that feels a lot like anything I've played despite recognizable elements. It's something I sat down and just had to take in, enjoying it in a serene state of mind, while still somehow being challenged. It's a duality that this game does real well. Prune is such a gorgeous experience. The music goes a long way towards setting the atmosphere, and the sound of when flowers bloom on your tree provides the rising notes, making your success. The game is otherwise dark, with a clever usage of colors and sound and music cues that inform you of what's going on. There's no dialogue in the game, but the story and points the experience becomes steadily clear as you play it. And really, Prune is a game that you must play. My review feels short, but because this is something that grows from such simple origins of being your trimming trees with finger swipes, and it grows out into something gorgeous and complex. Simple but beautiful, and something truly unique. The next game I want to talk about is Framed. Framed feels like the first half of what should be a really good game. It's a title with a great premise, rearranging comic book panels both in order and rotation so that the protagonist in the scene makes it to the end without getting detected by cops or falling to their doom. The cops in the world of Framed were not the Academy's best and brightest students, as they don't even turn around for the protagonist running through doors right behind them. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil is the motto of the Framed Police Department, but good for the character in this game, all trying to get control of a mysterious briefcase. The concept is really cool to play around with and invites some clever puzzle solving. The game plays with the way that comic book panels layouts work, meaning that swapping two panels may cause the way that the protagonist runs through through them to be different because they're running a different direction now. So the puzzles become about spatial awareness and figuring how to deal with the way they temporarily change as the puzzle pieces do. Odds are you've played nothing like it. The problem with this ingenious concept is that it never feels like it's quite used to its full potential. The best moments are when the game allows you the rearranging of narrative elements to cleverly impact the proceedings, like early on when it's possible to move an entire event with jumping over a table around to block bullets. The moments like this are the game at its best. The game uses spatial puzzles as well, where ladders, steps, and pathways can be moved and rotated in order to get to safety. But these form of the bulk of the game puzzles, and their novelty wears thin after a short while. It's not that they aren't designed well, it just feels like the trick of playing with comic panels continuity has been made. As well, the sections where panels can be rearranged while the scene is going on have some novelty of their own, but don't make sense. For example, there's one scene where a luggage rack can be knocked down to stun a passing guard, and then through rearranging the panels can be returned to in order to get the key necessary to progress. This is all fine and dandy, but rearranging panels properly feels way too clumsy, and it kind of goes against the comic book nature of the proceedings. To instead have it so that the order can be rearranged. I suppose the padding of the game's length and addition of a variety is welcome, but it is a poor addition to the game. The story also lacks a dialogue whatsoever, which seems clever enough, but it gets a bit confusing after a while to follow the narrative, which may be intentional though, but also the shifting nature of who the player is controlling doesn't help with the clarity of the narrative, as sometimes a supposed being guided by the player, it doesn't quite make sense as to why. There's a big twist in the game, and it serves more as an element of confusion than a big revelatory plot twist. Even the music winds up being repetitive and samey sounding over time. It's all a shame because the ideas here are top-notch, but they never quite come together to make a top-notch game. Given the brevity and lack of progression in the concept, this really does feel like half a large hole stretching out to fill one game. And it's sad because Framed oozes with promise, but is ultimately a letdown. The next game I'm going to talk about is it's been around for a while and very popular. You can play it on Facebook. There's apps and there's mini titles that go with it. The next game is Candy Crush Saga. Candy Crush Saga is among the classic of mobile games that defies the casual genre. Easy to play and even easier to get addicted to, Candy Crush Saga could easily suck up all your time if you let it. If you want mindless color matching, then look no further. The play is simple. Just swipe two candies to switch their positions, and the feedback you so carefully calculated that I am sure someone who'd never seen a smartphone in their life could easily figure it out. You have to redefine number of moves in which to score as many points as possible. You score points by lining up at least 3 in a row or at least 5 in an L of any light candies to crush them. Why are you crushing candy? I have no idea. But if you do enough of it in the level ends and you hear the happy music, I really like the happy music. As you crush candies, fresh random candies drop from the top of the screen to fill the gap. This makes it hard to strategize beyond using special super candies, sometimes creates in the process of Candy Crush. The game changes things up periodically by requiring you to score a certain number of points in so many moves, or adding jelly squares that can only be removed by candy crushing. The shape of the stages also changes from level to level, sometimes adding hard to crush wings off to the sides of the central board. Surprising, these little changes can make some levels devilishly difficult. The music is worth mentioning because, like the game, it's enjoyable but sometimes annoying over time. Loud and bombastic, the music swoops at you until it's hard to take. Using only the cutest instruments, ragtime piano, triangles, auto harps, etc., is surprisingly lush to the point of overkill. The end of the level music, which I do generally enjoy, sounds like a piano and a zither being thrown down a chromatic staircase over and over again. You'll walk away wincing. Beneath Candy Crush Saga, the saccharine veneer is heart of stone. Actually, it's not so much a heart as it is a vacuum cleaner, designed to keep your eyes stuck to the screen and eventually suck the cash out of your wallet. You see, it's really hard, if not actually impossible, to strategize in games like Candy Crush, and random elements mean some games are guaranteed to be unwinnable. Here's where the game gets devious. You start with 5 lives and slowly recover lives at the rate of 1 life per half hour. If you want to get more lives, you have to pay. If you want to win more often, you might want to pay for special bonus powers, which cost a much more reasonable 99 cents, like arcade cabinets. Everything about Candy Crush, from the images to the music, is designed to keep you playing, because eventually you'll lose and get desperate enough to start shelling out cash. In Candy Crush Saga Defense, I didn't find the game predatory. I won most of the levels I played and unlocked several power-ups for free. That's more. You have to unlock the ability to buy items by playing. That's the far less cynical than I expected, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the game is just trying too hard. Candy Crush Saga is well executed casual game that does a good job of keeping your thumb sliding across the screen. It's not clearly as cynical as I expected, but there's a little chance of strategy, and game bounces wildly between stupidly easy and frustratingly hard. While you can't beat free, or at least freemium, I would highly recommend that would-be casual gamers. That brings us to the end of another episode of MS Gamers Hut. I would like to thank MS&Me Radio for letting me talk about my passion with games, and my listeners, who without you, I would not have a show. Next week, I'm going to review different types of games featuring superheroes, anything from RPGs to puzzle games. Thank you, and goodbye.